Morning guys, Dave Canterbury at the Pathfinder School. What you see behind me is a half-face shelter that's been closed in on one side about 3/4 of the way to make it comfortable for several men to sleep inside. I've had some questions about this shelter and I'll show you a little bit closer view of a couple parts of it here in just a few minutes. There's a large keyhole cooking pit with a reflector out front, a couple flushing beams off to one side, and a large tripod for hanging deer-sized game on the other. And this would be a typical setup for long hunters in the 1760s, 1770s era that they would use while they were out hunting deer and trapping animals to sell on the market as market hunters. In the summer of 1771, Joseph Drake and Henry Skaggs gathered 40 men and journeyed deep into Kentucky for a long hunt. A long hunt would have been a market hunt for skins and furs. They took with them many supplies. Some of the supplies were listed in their journals. Each man took 2 horses. They took their dog. They had blankets. They had salt. They had ammunition, and they had powder. And those things are all listed in the list of things in their journal that they took with them. I'm sure they took a lot of other things as well. They had traps, and that was listed in the journal as well. They were going to stay for an undetermined amount of time until they got enough skins and furs, mainly deer skins, to pack their animals and take them back to the settlements to sell these things at market value. So understanding each man had 2 horses, they had plenty of room to carry deer hides out when the time came. Now, what they would do is they would go out and they would hunt from a station camp, very similar to this. They would kill deer, bring them back to the station camp. There would generally be people at the station camp that were just skinners. They'd be skinning the deer, scraping the gut side, scraping the hair side, making what's called a green deer skin. They would stack them on scaffolding, and they would cover the piles with a hair-on elk hide to protect them from the weather. And this scaffolding would be, 3-4 foot off the ground. After they had been there for several weeks, most of the party, except for 14, decided they'd been away from their family long enough that they wanted to go back to the settlements, so they left. A few days after that, 14 men, leaving only 3 behind at the station camp, decided to venture further in to the wilderness to find more hides and more furs. So they were gone for an undetermined amount of time into the wilderness, and when they returned to the station camp, Joseph Drake and Henry Skaggs, it was found that everything in the station camp was gone. Later it was found out that 2 of the men were captured by Indians and one of the gentlemen had managed to escape, but all of the deer hides, all of the furs, everything in their station camp was gone. Now you think, okay, well the Indians came in and stole a few deer hides from these guys. Well, it's a lot more than that, okay? In their despair, they left behind an epitaph or a message on a poplar tree, carved probably in with a knife, and the inscription read, 2,300 deer skins gone, ruination by God. 2,300 deer skins. Think about the work. Think about the sweat equity you would have in 2,300 deer hides. Scraping, hair side, gut side, stacking them up. Summertime, how bad that would stink, how hot you would get. Your whole existence right now revolves around this hunt, bringing this stuff back to sell on the market to feed your family. And everything that you've worked for so hard for the last several weeks or months is gone. Well, they decided they weren't going to put up with that, and they went off to retrieve said deer hides. So that's another story. For this story, what I want you to realize is that men did live in the wilderness environment like this, in shelters very similar to this, for weeks and months at a time. They were very well equipped. They had horses. They didn't walk in there with what was on their back. They had horses to carry equipment in for them to help affect their survivability. But the key thing to realize is that they killed 2,300 deer with flintlock firearms. And Joseph Drake records in his journal very clearly in one portion that during this journey, during this long hunt, he personally witnessed thousands of deer, buffalo, turkey, and elk. Buffalo long since gone from the eastern woodlands. Elk reintroduced into Kentucky and Tennessee. wild turkeys, all but hunted to extinction and now have been reintroduced and are thriving in eastern woodlands thanks to the National Wild Turkey Federation. So animals were a lot more plentiful back then than they are now, obviously, but the Flintlock firearm was capable of taking any game that they needed to take and maintain it, as well as maintain their health and prosperity when attacked by renegade Indians or whatever the case may be. That was their go-to gun. Yes, it was all they had in their technology, but it was perfectly capable of doing the job, and there's no reason with 21st century long hunter mentality that it's not perfectly capable of doing that same job today. And that's what we're going to look at. Stay with me, guys. Okay, fellas, so this is my center mark 20 gauge smooth bore Flintlock, and we've talked about this in several videos. The question is, how versatile is this gun in this day and age for us to use as a self-reliance type weapon? Well, I think it comes down to, number one, what's the availability of ammunition for any normal gun right now, which is next to nothing unless it's a 12 gauge, including 22s. And what will this firearm do for us that the normal 12 gauge will not do? Well, obviously the normal 12 gauge will fire any powder. This will not. This is going to have real black powder. So there's one large disadvantage right there. That's the only disadvantage to this gun other than moisture. Because if you have black powder, you can shoot anything out of this gun that will fit down the barrel, no question about it. And I don't have to have primers. All I have to have is a rock, a hard rock for a flint, which is right here. We've talked about that already in past videos. You can find flint if you live in the right area. If you don't, you can stock up on flint. It's still available to be had. It's not like ammunition. And then, as long as I maintain this gun, I have yet to have this gun misfire on me, and I've shot at least 20 times. Now, I haven't had it out in the rain yet. Rain does affect black powder, but there's ways around that, like a cow's knee over the top, things like that will protect it from the weather. Putting an oilcloth sleeve over it would help a lot as well. So let's talk about what I have to carry to be able to fire this weapon. Well, you see a lot of people who are emulating the days of black powder, and they're carrying a powder horn and a shot bag and all that stuff, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with the tradition of that. But if I've got a base camp similar to this, and I'm going out on an excursion for a hunt, I really only need a few shots. I don't need a whole bag of accoutrements. And I can get away with what's in this small belt pouch. Now, I used to keep my fire kit in this belt pouch, but I generally wear a ferrocerium rod around my neck, and I have the Flintlock mechanism for flint and steel. So let's talk about what's in the pouch that we need to shoot this gun that will give us those shots. Well, first of all, we need a measuring device. And I have my powder measure attached to it, made out of brass. No brainer. Now, I have to have shot and I have to have powder. Or I have to have ball, patch, and powder. This small horn was made by Steve Davis. It was made for more of a spice horn type thing, like a salt horn, but it holds enough Triple F powder to shoot 6 shots from my Flintlock, whether it's ball ammunition or shot ammunition. So I've got 6 shot capability right there. This small shot bag or shot pouch is made out of deer skin and horn. It's got number 6 shot in it, and there's enough shot in here, again, for 6 shots. I have a small wad of greased patch in here, in case I decide to shoot round ball. I have a napping hammer and turn screw that will just help me dress up my flint or take my gun lock apart in an emergency. This is not necessary to be in this pouch while hunting, for sure. I keep it in there for convenience sake. And then at the bottom of the pouch, I have 4 .62 caliber round balls for shot and a safety pin. And the safety pin just equates to a vent hole or touch hole pick, so that I can clean out my touch hole in between shots if I need to, and it could actually be attached to this through the eye very easily. But that gives me everything I need to fire this weapon and hunt with this weapon in the short term. I can shoot ball ammunition at things like deer, and I can shoot 6 shot at anything from small game to turkey with no problem. So I've got, just with what's right here on my belt, the capability to shoot that firearm just like having 12 gauge shells in my pocket. Okay guys, I thought I would kind of take you around this station camp for a minute. You can see there's a big earthen backed fire reflector in front of the keyhole fire pit right here. And then the structure itself is a very large open face frame that's just packed with debris. On the outside, it needs some dressing up right now. It's not as watertight as it should be at the moment. If you look at the inside, before the debris was placed on it, we'll go around in a minute here on the outside, but you can see that it's woven in here. In between the slats is all woven in, and then there's debris on top of that. There's a conical shape in the back. Elk hide right there on the ground for a sleeping mat. There's some dry firewood and a piece of trade cloth over there and some birch bark for fire starting to keep it dry. Plenty of room in here for 4 to 5 guys. Looking at the outside out here on the 3/4 face, basically again it's just debris and more debris. And here's our cone in the back over on this side. You can see there's a few holes in there that need to be filled in now as it stands. But something like this takes a lot of maintenance, a lot of upkeep, and also a lot of time to construct. This was started during the advanced skills class by Alec Foreman and Josh and some other people. It took about a total of 10 people, probably a total of 6 or 7 hours to get this completed to the state it's in right now. But it's been sitting in the weather all winter long, and is the state you see it now from when it was made, you know, way before the fall. So it's done a whole season at what it is right now, and now there's just patchwork that needs to be done to it to get it shored up again. Okay guys, I'm Dave Canterbury at the Pathfinder School. I appreciate you joining for another video out here today. I thank you for everything you do for me, for my school, for my friends, for my family, for my sponsors and my affiliates, and I'll be back to another video as soon as I can. Thanks guys.